On August 15th, we brought out about 300 people to a march. 500 people actually came out to our rally festival, and 300 actually marched with us. It was, the day happened in 3 parts. We had a rally and festival at the Richmond BART station, which was a musical program interspersed with speakers from all the different interest groups. The messaging was throughout the whole program. We had a labor speaker. We had each of the community groups represented on stage. So that was great. That ended up in a 2.5-mile march to the Chevron refinery, and that was the site of the direct action that we took, which was a staged die-in in front of Chevron. And simultaneously we had speakers representing impacted communities from around the world, not just Richmond, but we had Burma there. Who else was there? There's an African representative, right?
From Nigeria.
Nigeria was there. Right, and so these people were speaking out on Chevron's impacts in their community, giving testimonials while people were staging this die-in. It was really powerful. So that was a big success, I think, in our minds. It was also the launch of the mobilization, kind of. It was our first action that happened, and so that was also a success for us. We had recruited about 30 groups up until then, and most of them showed up for us. So we also got a good response from the community groups, which was really important to us, that we represented their views well, and that the turnout was diverse. There was Richmond residents there. Yeah, I think it was good. So that was August 15th, if you weren't there. And then, so like I said before, the camp was first organized, and the action actually was an idea to have this camp with an action attached to it, but scheduling kind of shifted, so the action got scheduled first, and then the camp came a month later. So in September, we had this other climate convergence. We call it the West Coast Convergence for Climate Justice and Action, which was also targeted in Richmond. We had it at a church in Richmond for the reason of accessibility to the Richmond community. And that was a 3-day training and educational event on not just what was happening in the local struggle, and it also included trainings on climate justice and community-based solutions to oil-affected communities, as well as just climate change. So we also had trainings on things like permaculture, community-based media, and urban gardening. We took a trip out to one of the local farms there, which was really great. We got to go on that trip. And that was also a success. We feel like outreach could have been a little bit better, but the energy the whole weekend was really great. We had some great trainers from Movement Generation, Ruckus Society, and a lot of our other member orgs held training. So that's what happened in September. That was 3 days. We also ended on action on the following Monday, which I don't know if you've seen the visuals, the pictures online, but we had some great visuals. We bought a huge used parachute, and David Solnick, one of our main organizers, and a longtime community organizer, he orchestrated the painting of a banner of this parachute to say climate chaos, or climate justice, or climate chaos. It was huge. We took it downtown. We opened it up and protested outside of Chevron's Energy Solutions office. And then took the banner to and occupied an intersection in downtown SF. This was during lunch hour. It's actually the intersection right outside of Rainforest Action Network's office, so they could take pictures for us. And we got some really great visuals, but that was the action that was planned at the Convergence, and then we brought it here to SF right there. So, all right.
En route to that action, we actually also stopped by Barbara Boxer's office, because her committee was the recent author of the latest version of the climate bill that came through. And I guess what our experience has been, and what's been reinforced through these experiences, is that it is locally that we have the best effect. We can have the most influence. And while we watch the climate policy arenas play out in DC and in Copenhagen, fights like the Richmond fight against Chevron are really emblematic of where people power actually can make a difference. Measure T, some of you have heard of, where the community has voted in a pollution tax. We've been contemplating how that could be shared, the strategy around that could be shared with communities around this country that are facing refinery expansions, coal power plants in their backyards. And so a lot of our convergence was really exploring those strategies. How can we share them and, sort of with other communities and other community organizing groups? And it might be worth mentioning that beyond the local MCJ organizing, there's some national organizing that is quite interesting. You may have heard of, is the name Kingsnorth familiar? Has anyone heard the name Kingsnorth in recent email blasts? Kingsnorth was the largest coal power plant that was being built in all of Europe in Kingsnorth in the UK by a company called E.ON. They just recently shelved that project. The significance of that is, again, that was the site of one of the first climate camps that took place, one of the first climate convergences. And over the last 3 years, there have been annual protests, mass protests, where thousands of people have gone in, raided the site, stopped the construction, and in the last action, a number of activists were arrested climbing up the smokestack of one of the older smokestacks. It's an expansion project. And the significance of that action was that when they went to court, they pled a necessity defense plea, which basically said that their actions while breaking the law was for a higher cause to prevent climate chaos. And the judge in that high court actually threw out the case and actually sided with the protesters. It was the first time a necessity defense ruling on direct action has actually won anywhere in the world. That has spurred actions all across the U.S. You've probably heard about numerous actions in Appalachia, at coal power plants all over the U.S. There was a big action in D.C. recently, a big student action earlier this year. And so that's what a lot of us have been planning. There's a website called Beyond Talk for people who are tired of all the talk and want actually to step up and ramp up people power so that we can actually see action, meaningful action from our decision makers, where people can sign up to actually either pledge to take civil disobedience themselves, or if you aren't able or in a position to take civil disobedience, you may have kids or can't afford to go to jail or have other things, pressing issues, you can offset your ability to take direct action, pay for someone else to get arrested. So there's all these mechanisms right now to push out climate activism out onto the streets, because that's where I think we really need to focus, our strategic focus. Because as much as we try to battle the regulatory arenas and the policy arenas and fight these firefights in these various arenas against big corporations, our power is still out on the streets. And we'll probably close with what we're planning on the streets in the days to come.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we have two actions that are left for the year before Copenhagen. But we definitely have intentions to further our campaign past Copenhagen, even especially leading up to the U.S. Social Forum in Detroit next year, and then just beyond. Climate change isn't going to be solved in the next 2 years. So our next action is on October 24th. This is the International Day of Climate Action that 350, the folks at 350.org are calling around the world, and there's some 125 countries now throwing like 1,500 actions or something enormous. So in the Bay Area, the mobilization is being really involved in our mobilization-specific actions, which are going to be at individual BART stations around the Bay. We're going to occupy as many as we can to throw public action events. So people can sign up for your local BART station. We're going to have flyers ready for you to hand out that are informational, unless you want to create your own. And we're kind of leaving it open to however you'd want to organize that. I've heard some talk about banner drops even from some of the BART stations. And the other way we're being involved is that we're helping to organize and plan the mass convergence that's happening at Justin Herman Plaza at 3 p.m. on that day. So there are various actions happening around the Bay. Other actions including a 350-mile bike ride from Arcata down to the bay that will end on that day, a 3.5-mile bike ride around the future SF shoreline,